All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, again in the United States, in Israel, and in Palestine, other places in the world. Welcome to the latest and Partners for Progressive Israel's webinar series, Conversations with Israel and Palestine. My name is Rabbi Margot Hughes Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of Partners. And before we move into our conversation today, I just want to share a few words about PPI. Partners for Progressive Israel is an American not-for-profit dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors, which includes an end to Israel's occupation based on a two-state solution. Partners supports Israelis and Palestinians working to ensure social justice, civil rights, Jewish-Palestinian partnership, and equality for all of Israel's inhabitants. In short, we connect American progressives in the Jewish community and beyond to progressive leaders and movements in the land, like the folks we have on our call today. We are really glad to be bringing this webinar to you all for free. And if you enjoy it and you want to see more programming like this, please visit progressiveisrael.org and consider making a contribution. I also really want to thank my colleague Ron Skolnick, who coordinates these webinars on behalf of partners. A quick note about the chat versus the Q&A. The chat is open, and let me adjust it really quick to make sure it is available to everyone. However, all questions for our moderator to raise with our panelists will go in the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, the Q&A box is right next to the show captions button. It looks like a little box with a question in it. So the chat is for, seeing people you recognize here on the webinar together and sharing messages with each other, but Q&A is where you can see questions others have asked, ask a question, upvote a question. That is our space that our moderator will be checking. So now I'll introduce our panel in brief. Rabbi Arik Ascherman. Arik Ascherman has dedicated his life to defending the image of God in every human being. He's internationally recognized as a leading advocate for human rights and social justice, as a religious Jewish and Zionist obligation, and has received numerous awards and recognitions for his work. In 2017, Rabbi Ascherman founded Torat Tzedek, the Torah of Justice, whose guiding principle is to defend the human rights of both Jews and non-Jews. Torat Tzedek currently provides protective presence for threatened shepherding communities in the West Bank, delivers emergency aid, and works legally to return communities that have been expelled or have fled because of state-backed settler violence. Starting in 1995, Rabbi Ascherman was with Rabbis for Human Rights, where he served as co-director and then executive director and then president and senior rabbi. During his tenure, Rabbis for Human Rights made Sheikh Jarrah an international issue, placed volunteers as human shields protecting Palestinian farmers, and worked against dispossession of Negev Bedouin. Rabbi Ascherman graduated from Harvard University and was ordained by Hebrew Union College. Also joining us is Haj Amjad, who's an American citizen living in Muhmas in the West Bank. And our moderator, Professor Sam Fleischacker, is the Distinguished Professor of Philosophy at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He works on moral and political philosophy and the philosophy of religion. He's the author of 10 books, including A Modern Ethical Framework for Understanding Jewish Law and The Good and the Good Book. He has been a longtime supporter of Americans for Peace Now and the New Israel Fund, and he joined the board of Partners for Progressive Israel in 2015. And in 2025, this year in June, he joined Torat Tzedek to do protective presence in the West Bank. And so without further ado, Sam, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Margot. I just want to express my appreciation to you and to PPI for the work that you do in general and these webinars specifically. And I want to thank Rabbi Ascherman and Hajam Amjad for joining us and express my appreciation for the work that they do. Amjad, let's start with you. Could you tell us something about what is going on in Muhmas these days, the community that you live in, and what the problem of settler violence looks like in your experience?
Yes. Well, since the war started for the last 2 years, we've been having a lot of problems from the settlers. They've been all around the town in a daily basis. On a daily basis, they try to come from too many points to either attack somewhere with the sheep at or the chicken places or houses, or they cut trees. Like a couple of days ago, they cut like 30, 40 trees, olive trees. And this has been happening for, like I said, since the war started in Gaza for 2 years now, in a daily basis. And I'm talking about the 24 hours. Anything can happen through the 24 hours. Go ahead.
No, you go on. Keep going.
Yeah, we have group in the town, guys that watch the town for basically almost 24 hours, all night long. There's shifts, and they have cameras. Every time that they see settlers coming from any side, which is there's too many sides. It's not like one place they come. They all come and try to stop them. And we have like Eric, thanks to Eric and his group. Anytime this happen, we call them. They come. They can help us a lot. I wish if there's more people like Eric here. The bottom line, they we have uh, they do too many things. The settlers, sometimes they're shooting, sometimes they come like 4 or 5 guys, sometimes like 50, 40, 30. It depends, but it's always a problem. Every single day there's something. The cops, the army comes every single day, 2, 3, 4 times a day, because of what the settlers keep doing. Um, so we need as help as possible from anybody can help us, because this town is not like it's almost 80% is American citizen of this town, but most of them live in America. There's only like 800 people live here, and there's over 5,000 from the town lives in the United States. Almost 80% is American citizen. It's a small town. It's not many in it. Uh, if you have any more questions, you can go ahead.
Sure, sure. I'll come back to you. Uh, Rabbi Arik, could you tell us something about what protective presence is and what you've been doing in general and then specifically in Muhmas?
Sure. Although we're not supposed to move Hanukkah candles, I'm going to move these so maybe you see me a little bit better.
Happy
Um,
Hanukkah.
and yes, Paguvim Sameach. You can see that I'm doing protective presence right now. I am here in the village of Duma. You can see here some of the people that live here. Um, and basically, um, the situation for West Bank Palestinians today after October 7th, I mean, there have been problems before that, obviously, but is something like Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor. How many people helped, stood by Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor when they were put in camps? It was only 40 years later that the U.S. administration began to compensate and apologize and say what we did was a combination of racial prejudice, um, wartime hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. And in the over 30 years that I've been working, doing this work, for most of that time, I never felt marginalized, but I do today. And we are really here with just our finger in the dike, um, when that even the support that we had in the past in Israeli society for Palestinian human rights, all too often talking the talk without walking the walk, but even that is largely gone. And so we are a very small group. And I don't even say that protective presence is going to fix things, but it's with a finger in the dike. We are holding on until there will be better times because literally there are, since three communities before October 7th, tens and tens of communities. Right, right, after October 7th, and and there are just tens and tens of communities that are gone. And the one thing that can help keep remaining is basically exploiting the fact that even Israelis who were somewhat supportive of Palestinian human rights no longer are. The settlement movement has exploited the pain that we've all been feeling to fast forward plans that they made years, if not decades, before October 7th, uh, to take over as much of the West Bank as possible. And starting first with the vulnerable Bedouin communities. But, as the Amjad said, Mukhmas is an established village, albeit maybe a relatively small one. And what we now see is not only are the settlers going after the Bedouin communities, of which there is a Bedouin community which we are protecting on the outskirts of Mukhmas, but um, they're going after the village itself. They established in around October 20th. Already about half a year ago, they built a road going from the one of the many outposts and settlements surrounding Mukhmas, which Amjad already mentioned, up into the Palestinian agricultural lands. And we knew it was a matter of time before they would use that to set up another outpost, even closer. And they set up on a ridge. On one side of that ridge is the Bedouin community. On the other side of the ridge is the village itself. And so, for example, the day they set it up, the mayor of Mukhmas, we did everything possible to get it removed immediately. It didn't happen. And there is the support of the Israeli security forces, sometimes passive, sometimes active. So then there was one night where we heard buzzsaws, we heard chainsaws, and they were cutting down trees. And we have recordings of calls to the police, WhatsApp messages to the army. And they refused to come, and then until we found the trees in the morning. And then a few days after that, on October 25th, there was a pogrom. I don't have any words. Like, some people get upset using like the word for our Jewish pain for somebody else, but there's no other word to describe it. On October 25th, using this new outpost as a base, they first attacked Palestinian olive farmers, injured 5, damaged 2 cars. There was shooting. They then came into the Bedouin community. I was trying to arrive at that point, trying in between as hordes of settlers are coming down the hill. I get my car windows broken. 2 of my volunteers get injured. And then houses are going up in flames. That's why we also have a crowdfunding campaign right now. It's just replacing what was burnt and the stolen sheep and everything else is like 260,000 shekels. And so we are there in way too small numbers to try to put ourselves between Palestinians and the threat, to try to work with Palestinians to call the security forces, to document and do whatever we can to help people survive. And I don't judge any community that has fled because of the violence. But it is simply amazing that the people here in Duma, where I am right now, or in Mukhmas, the communities are still there. The Bedouin in Mukhmas say, we see how the people that people fled their communities. We don't want to live that way. Here where I am in Duma, these are people that have already been expelled from their homes in Rashash. And Riyadh, who is here, for example, says, I'm not going to flee again. I'm not going to run away again. So there's incredible bravery. And they also say they could not do this without us being here. And if you weren't here, we'd be gone as well. Like maybe not the actual village of Mukhmas, but the Bedouin community would be. And they're going to try to go after the entire village as well. They're not going to stop at anything. And that's why, and we'll put it up on the chat, we need you here. I'm embarrassed to say we do not have enough Israelis doing protective presence. We struggle in at least some of the communities. And there are a couple of different groups, not only Torat Tzedek, there are different groups that are doing different regions around the West Bank. We are struggling to find two people to be 24/7 in at least some of the communities. We need 20 people in each of the endangered communities, 24/7, and accompanying some of the communities that want to go back. I just had a meeting today with the people from Wadi Asik. This was one of the most violently expelled communities back on October 12th of 2023, where people were literally expelled at gunpoint and said, "You're out of here in an hour or you're dead." And the court has refused to agree to remove the nearby outpost, the leader of which, Neri Ben Pazi, who was at one point also being sanctioned by the United States, um, orchestrated the expulsion on that day, on the 12th. And they're saying you have to go back and prove that the police and army that did nothing or even participated in that expulsion on October 12th are going to protect you. And we just had a meeting because they're debating. We've managed to get some progress because now the court at least said if there's one incident in which the police don't protect you, you come right back to us and we're going to do something. But that still they're saying we're living in the pits, we're alive, not living, but we're alive. And do we take the risk? So we decided today that they're going to try to go back after the winter, after Ramadan in May. And we're going to need a lot of people to do that because we're going to have to be a lot of people on the ground with them. And then we still have to be in Mukhmas and in Duma and all the other places. And so we'll share with everybody our appeal and how you get in touch with us to actually join us on the ground. And we've had people from age 20 to age, mid 70s. Maybe we've had people in our 80s as well. I'm not sure. Anybody that can give us a week, a month, whatever amount of time that you can give with all the things, and I know how frustrated sometimes it seems when it doesn't seem like anything's working, anything's changing anything. Although I was just in DC and there is an indication that maybe because Trump wants his Nobel Peace Prize, that there's a little bit more attentiveness in the US administration now to settler violence, a little bit more anger about settler violence here because the golem has turned it's turned on its the golem like the Maral of Prague that created to defend Jews and created a being out of clay, kind of a and until he had to deactivate it because it started turning on everybody. Now that the settler violence is not only directed against Palestinians, they're going after soldiers and police. So now some Israelis are waking up to what is actually they've created, but they're still not willing to realize who created it. It's the government that created it. It's the army that created it. It's not, but with all of that, um, the one thing that can make a difference until, as with King Solomon's ring, in which he created something that would cheer him up when he was depressed and sober up when he was too happy, a round ring saying, "This too shall pass." We have to hold on until this shall pass, so there'll be better days. And for that, we need you here.
Thank you, Arik. I want to just add my own personal reflection. Spending a month with you helping do this, I found very powerful, personally moving, and it felt worthwhile in a way that just giving money isn't often. And it also was very educative. I also learned a lot about the situation. I very much appreciated how you work with people, how you work with volunteers, and how you work with the Palestinians on the ground and so forth. You both sort of answered some of the questions I wanted to ask, which were about whether violence has increased or not, whether you're getting. When I was there, one of the things I found very frustrating was that we called the police and the army for almost every single attack every day, and they very rarely even showed up. And when they showed up, they did almost nothing or nothing at all. And I was wondering if that has gotten any way better. It sounds from what you said that it's actually gotten worse. Um, you can comment on what I just said if you want in your responses, but let me just begin to bring in some of the questions from other people. So the first question we had was whether there's any communication between Torat Tzedek or the Palestinians with the residents and leaders of the Jewish settlements. And there was a question about whether what their reaction is, and whether they might take more responsibility for these attackers. I think the presumption is that these these attackers are a minority, a particularly violent group among the settlers. I don't know if that's true, but in any case, have you had any sign that the settlements themselves, the mainstream people there, would like to stop these attacks?
I will simply say, uh, again, and you can see the open letter that we'll put also in the chat that I wrote to our President Herzog. He spoke very nice words, strongly condemning settler violence after it turned on the soldiers and police, not just when it was only Palestinians. But he tried to diminish the the whole phenomenon as just a handful of violent, troubled youth. And he said, and many have reported, that the leadership is opposed to this violence. And I'm sorry to say, it's just not true. There are some settler leaders who oppose the violence. I'm not saying there aren't any. And they usually get attacked by their fellow settlers um, for this. Um, the vast majority of the settlers, um, first of all, at best, they turn the other way and don't deal with it. Many, although not all the most violent settlers grew up themselves in settlements, many of them did, and they were educated in a kind of hothouse, greenhouse, educating them to maybe even go steps further than their own parents did. There are some of these troubled youth who don't even respect their parents who created settlements, um, but many of them got that education in the settlements, and then you have to go through further circles. I just spoke at a conference when our coalition of Israeli human rights organizations every year puts out a report about the occupation, and we just did so, and we did a conference according all with Haaretz newspaper, and what I said is, um, I didn't say this so directly, but it's what I feel is that there are too many people who say they're opposed to the occupation, opposed to these human rights violations, that sit in Tel Aviv and say, tis isn't terrible. But it is simply not true that what we've been hearing recently, that the settlement leadership is opposed to this. It is supporting their goals, which are and the goal, unwritten but very real goal of successive Israeli governments, which is if Palestinians cannot be expelled from the entire West Bank right now, to at least move them out of Area C, that part of the West Bank, which is still under total Israeli control and a lot of land with relatively few Palestinians, and concentrate them in areas A and B as much as possible. And one of the ways you do that, and Zev Heffer, one of the settlement leaders and ideologues, said already back in February 2021, we are creating shepherding outposts because it's even more effective than a regular settlement for taking over and holding on to Palestinian land. It's all and the one of the ways they do that is through the violence and threat of violence. It is simply, I'm sorry to say this, I really am, but it is not true to say that the settlement leadership is opposed to this violence.
It's very disturbing. No, not, I think, very surprising. Amjad, I have a question for you, and then I'll turn back to some of the questions that are in the chat. I mean, in the Q&A. One thing that we hear a lot about is that some aspects of the Palestinian solidarity movement are opposed to working with Israelis like Arik under the heading of that being normalization. Have you faced that kind of accusation? What do you say to it? If so,
Yeah, we had one incident in my town. I don't know about other towns that some few guys. It's not even they're not even from the town. They don't even live here. Um, when they heard Eric was living maybe a week or so, I'm not sure how long he was here. They started asking why, what's going on, and but everybody stopped them. Everybody's against it. Because we see with our own eyes what Eric and his group does. Uh, you cannot imagine what would have happened if Eric and people like Eric wasn't between us and the settlers. It would have been much worse situation. So we actually everybody in my town happy to have. We wanted more people like Eric, because if they like Eric mentioned, if there was 15, 20 people 24 hours around, I don't think we would have a problem.
hmm.
So no, actually we welcome them. Most of the people in the town welcome people like Eric, because they really protect us, and we appreciate them being here.
Thank you. I have to say that was my experience being there. Almost everybody was very warm and welcoming. Um, so another question, David Abraham asks whether most Israelis actively support this pogromism and the land theft, or willfully ignore it, and what it might take to build support within Israel against this kind of behavior.
I think um, there is a majority of Israelis who oppose this kind of violence, but the real question is how many of them are willing to do anything about it? And all too few, is it really important enough, especially post October 7th? In other words, before October 7th, there would be um, maybe more public support for opposing this violence. Uh, Post October 7th, even people who, as I said, were previously in favor at some level of Palestinian human rights had just, we don't care. Some of them went over to that, that all Palestinians are Hamas and terrorists and all kinds of things like this. As I said, there's been a newfound Israeli anger against settler violence after a few recent publicized incidents of the settlers attacking soldiers and police. But it's unfortunately not really because they're concerned about Palestinians, but because again the golem has turned on its creators and is attacking the soldiers and police as well.
By the way, one question that we had quickly for you, Arik, you're in Duma now. Isn't that where the a child was
Firebombing
killed?
murder.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm taking questions more or less in a sort of a systematic order, not necessarily the order they came in, so I can group issues. So one question is, why bother calling the police an army, given that they don't do anything? Um, is it helpful? What's helpful about calling in the police an army, if it is?
I would give two answers. First of all, sometimes it is helpful. For example, actually, the army is a little bit more helpful in Muhmas than it is in Duma, where they are totally openly supporting the settlers and saying even that these outposts are illegal, they're illegal even according to Israel, let alone international law, are actually permitted and all kinds of things. In Muhmas, before the pogrom, the one of the things that would happen on a daily basis almost was that from one of the local outposts they would come with their flock and just travel between the homes in the Bedouin neighborhood in particular. Um, and on a reasonable number of times we could actually get the army to come and expel them. Oh, they didn't do what they should have done. They didn't ID them, they didn't arrest them, they didn't do all kinds of other things that they should have done, but they did something. Um, the second answer is, again, just this very issue that we had when we went to the High Court for Wadi Asik. The judges asking us to prove to them that we had tried to ask for help from the army and police. Um, um, and there are those, and I'm sure Amjad can speak to this, certainly among Palestinians who say it's the Israeli occupation army. We want nothing to do with them. We're never going to ask for their help. No way, no how. But generally, first of all, I don't make decisions. Whether I'm working with Israelis in public housing or with Palestinians, my role is to empower Palestinians to make decisions and tell me what to do, not the other way around. And so if Palestinians tell me, don't call the police or army, I don't call them. And if they tell me to call the police and army, which they generally do in Muhmas, for example, and also here, then I do. I don't make those decisions. It's not my right to make those decisions for myself, um, because because we're in Palestine, and also because I'm going to go home at the end of the day, and the people living there are going to have to deal with the results. Um, the final answer to that is that according to international law, an occupying power has certain obligations, um, and we demand that they uphold those obligations. And if we eventually, international law basically says when you try to exhaust everything you can do within your country, that's when you go to the world, to the international community. And and it's also for us to be able to show to the international community that we've tried everything and it didn't work. So even when it doesn't work, it's important to prove that it doesn't work.
Good. Amjad, Arik said that you could speak to this too. Do you have a view about whether it's worthwhile to call the police and army? Um,
Yes, yes. I almost agree with everything he said. Um, and I only can speak about our town because I know the example of our town is a little bit different than most of other towns. Like he said, every time something happened, we do call the cops, and we call the police, and we call the army. And when they come, basically, no matter what's the situation, as soon as they come, everything stops. And that's the main reason we call. But there's no arrest. We don't. They don't do nothing. Like they don't arrest them or anything like this. But the whole situation, whatever it is, the situation, if they were attacking or everything stops. So uh, I could say our town is a little bit easier than other towns, just like what Eric mentioned.
I see.
Uh, but the attacks is always happening, and when you see the cops or the army comes 3 4 times a day. Why? Because they do come 3 4 times a day to try to do something. Uh, it's just hard to live in this situation. It's very hard, and we have to call them. We have to call them, even if they don't do nothing. We have. There's nothing else we could do except call the army.
Yeah.
So
There have been a few cases since the pogrom where they do come and actually spend half the night with a jeep they're guarding. Sometimes when the settlers attack, they'll come and running after them, and even at night shooting flares to look after them.
that's true.
But as Abdel also said, um, they don't do what they really need to do, what they should be doing to really put a stop to this.
Yeah, it sounds like they are helpful on a temporary basis sometimes, but not it's a band-aid. It's not really solving the problem.
No,
We say in Arabic, aksam and balash, better than nothing, but not enough.
better than nothing. Nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I have another question here about whether Torat Tzedek works together with other coexistent organizations joining you. I mean, this could be for both Arik and for Amjad. Do you work with other organizations? What kind of coordination is there among other kinds of coexistence organizations that do similar work to Torat Tzedek?
There are basically four different groups doing protective presence in different regions. We do along what's called the Alone Road. There's the Jordan Valley activists in the northern Jordan Valley, looking at the occupation of the eyes in the southern Jordan Valley, and then Tayush and Center for Jewish Nonviolence and many others in Masafa Yatta, the South Lebanon Hills. And then there's also groups like UPPI, bringing also internationals like we've started to try to do as well. And in fact, we've gotten to we're actually waiting to hear now by the end of the month. We made it to the final stage of in a grant application, which would allow us to do a lot more work together and hopefully more effectively.
Oh, good. Are there other, Amjad, do you come up, do you deal with other groups in Mukhmas, or is it basically Torah Tzedek?
Yeah, to my knowledge is Eric. It could be other groups that we think they're all the same. Um, but
Yeah.
to my knowledge, I don't know other groups.
Okay. Um, Talking about the groups on the ground, there's a question about what special contribution, if any, that American Jews might have to make in terms of a protective presence. Is there certain value specifically to having American Jews doing this work?
Uh,
Amjad? No?
yes, absolutely. We'll make it. Uh, no matter how you think about it, when you're an American citizen, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. Not all the time, but it does make a difference. Like our town, one of the reasons I think that the pressure from the army is not like in the other towns, because basically this town is almost all of it an American citizen.
Mm,
So when a Jewish American be here, that would be big help, because they don't want to show the picture of what's going on, because they know they can take it back to the state, and that picture they don't want it to be. They don't want to show what's going on. So if there's an American Jewish here, that would help a lot.
Arik,
We need to be lobbying the U.S. government, um, uh, and we need financial support, and we really, really, really need you on the ground.
Boots.
I'll also say that uh, just before hopping on a plane and coming to the States for a couple days and being in DC, as I said, I took one of the American diplomats on a tour. Uh, and when he first arrived, about the same time that Donald Trump assumed his second term, and he said that he was going to, that one of his goals was to try to um, convince the ambassador and the administration of the importance of dealing with settler violence. I thought, um, you're living in an alternative universe. There's like no chance. But things have changed. And what's really interesting, Ambassador Huckabee, who is always speaking about his support for the settlements and support for, all these things, it started with him visiting in Taibe, which is a Christian community, and he's a Christian fundamentalist minister. But what this person said is he is now particularly interested in what's happening with Palestinians who are U.S. citizens. And I have to say, I've been doing this for 30 years. Um, and I think for most of those 30 years, U.S. administrations, be they Democratic or Republican or whatever, have expressed a lot of tea and sympathy, but none of them have really done what one ought to expect that the U.S. government would do for its citizens. And if, as bizarre as it sounds, that it might be the Trump administration and Huckabee, if he really is serious, as he seems to be saying, that he's now expressing interest in what's happening with Palestinians who are U.S. citizens, it would be a game. It could be a game changer and something that sadly is never. I don't know any U.S. administration that's really done what I would have expected them to do. In the same way that it's all for the years, it's always so strange to hear the Christian Zionists um, who never listen to what their fellow Christian Palestinians have to say. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So another question on the Q&A is how much of the settler violence might be being fueled from outside Israel and the occupied territories? Is there financial support or maybe rhetorical support or people actually coming in? Are the people actually coming in to support the settler violence?
The Christian Zionists in the United States do send people, maybe not to support the violence directly, but to be in and supporting and volunteering in the settlements. There's been many attempts that have not been fully successful to try to trace where the money is coming from.
Hmm.
And we certainly know that there is a lot of U.S. funds and donations coming to support the settlement movement, which also means supporting the violence. Um, and I had a conversation with somebody in the State Department a couple years ago, um, and I asked, uh, why not um, um, have some kind of legislation or something that would against giving tax exempt status to um, organizations that are opposing what is theoretically U.S. policy at the time. That was under the Biden administration, theoretically. And he said, because it's a two-edged sword, because then it can be, and that's somewhat what happened. Another administration comes in and their policies are different. To which I said, why not based on necessarily just what U.S. policy is, but violations of international law? And there is a Leahy law, which says that U.S. military hardware is not supposed to be used for when it's anywhere in the world when it's being used for human rights violations. in the previous Trump administration, Ambassador Friedman basically circumvented the State Department, went right to Trump and said, we shouldn't even be asking Israel to fill out the reporting for complying with ley law because we know we're not going to stop giving military support. So there are things that could be done that haven't been done. There are some people that are trying to get a better idea of tracing the money so that maybe something more could be done. But there absolutely is American money coming to support this stuff.
So there's a question about guns. Um, it's from Lawrence Joffe in London, and I'll just read what he says. I am alarmed by the use of gunfire by settler arsonists. Has change in the law on gun ownership worsened matters, or are the hilltop youth using guns from their service in the IDF? Finally, and relatedly, what effect does the politicization of the police, especially in the occupied territories, under Ben-Gvir, what effect has that had? So about guns, and then also about where they're coming from, and whether the changes in gun ownership has made things worse, and then also about the politicization of the police.
For many years, the Hilltop Youth didn't want to be in the Army, and the Army didn't want them. Now they've created units. Just today, and it's not just the youth. I was here in Marajam, which is like a suburb of a sort or an outlying area of Duma. I saw there was settler soldiers in full uniform, driving one of the all-terrain vehicles which the government is providing to the outposts, um, accompanying settlers from the illegal outposts with their cows on Palestinian land. You know, and Ben Gvir has been handing out guns to these people. Uh,
Literally handing them
they,
out.
I
Literally.
mean, you have to have done army service and have a permit. But yes, more or less, he's been handing them out guns, and wished he had more to hand out. And they're handing out the all-terrain vehicles. Um, um, are there more guns now than in the past? Um, I'm not sure, but what I am sure about is with every passing day, the settlers are more and more emboldened because they see that they never pay any price and there's no consequences for anything they do. And so they just get more and more and more violent, even as I said, going after an established village like Mukmas and going after soldiers and police.
I have a question here about whether congressional measures that try to reimpose the Biden sanctions um, that Trump rescinded, whether those make any difference on the ground. I'm guessing. Yeah, go ahead.
I I think that I don't think that the sanctions on some of the even worse, nastiest settlers were particularly effective because I don't think many of them had assets that could be frozen in the United States or some of the other countries that have been doing this. I don't think they particularly were planning on coming to visit the United States and are particularly concerned if they now were banned. Um, Sometimes when a couple of cases when Israeli banks followed suit, that was more important. But canceling them sent a terrible message. Even if they weren't effective, canceling them sent the absolute wrong message. And what is much more effective, and this gets back to the money question, is the sanctions which some governments have imposed on groups like Amanah, the settler organizations that are funding the outposts and the settlements and the violence. And that to me is actually much more important and effective than this settler or that settler.
Um, a broad question, which we might help bring us towards a conclusion. We're beginning to come to the end of the hour. Um, as I understand the question at least, it's twofold. One is, and this is for both of you, Amjad and Arik, do you think that if a peace solution would be found, maybe possibly one of the plans currently on the table, though they aren't detailed, that Israel would actually leave the territories? And then the flip side of that is, if Israel were to leave the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, would that be enough for a peace solution in both of your views?
Fadl.
Uh, yeah, in my view, the only way that happened, if the United States put that kind of pressure, if the United States believe in that and put pressure on Israel, that's the only way that can happen. If that happened, any other, there's no way they will leave the West Bank or Gaza without the United States putting that pressure. That's in my, I think in all Palestinian views, not my view. This is what we think. That's the only country is able to put pressure on Israel is the United States of America. And we wish and we hope that would happen, and we have peace finally. We hope that can happen.
The way human rights organizations define their mandate, we say that the occupation must end because it inevitably leads to human rights violations, but we see it as beyond our mandate to advocate for a particular solution, one state, two states, 10 states, borders here or there. Um, and I really do think that it's the process that's more important than this solution or the other solution. Having said that, and I understand that Partners is an advocate for a two-state solution. After many years of having said that those say ringing the death knell of the two-state solution were way too premature, I don't say that anymore. Um, it's not impossible, but the two-state solution is all but dead. There are maybe some variations on the theme that are still possible, and whatever. Um, And of course, a one-state solution is anathema to most Israelis and also to many Palestinians who think that a one-state solution is going to be an apartheid state and not a democratic state. Um, but I have to say, not because I'm opposed, and as Amjad said, maybe the key really is in the United States. Um, if there's any, I will say that anybody who still believes that a two-state solution is possible should be, and I say this often to diplomats from around the world and the United States, you should be more than anybody else fighting to stop the expansion of the outposts and settlements because and when I in our region along the Alone Road, every week every day I see more building of outposts and new outposts and and actually, I should have sent you to share, but I'll send it and it can be sent out to people afterwards. A map created by Dror Etkes and the Israeli NGO Navot's Vineyard, Kerem Navot, um, which shows the spheres of settler control. And you just see this sea of red, which is the settler control, and the little enclaves where we and others are working that aren't under the control of the settlers. But when you look at how much of the West Bank is under settler control right now, not just where the buildings are, but the areas that they're controlling, um, you see just how difficult it would be right now at this point, actually, to reverse that.
I should say, by the way, Partners has no, I don't think has a single position about what the end solution to the conflict might look like. We are mostly an organization about building bridges with Palestinians and with Israeli Palestinian organizations like yours, Arik, and human rights groups in Israel, basically progressive groups in Israel, uh, between Americans, American Jews, and and not just American Jews, Americans and those organizations. And on our board alone, and I'm sure within the groups of people supporting us, there are people who support a two-state solution, definitely, very strongly. Others who support a confederation, like what's promoted by Land for All. I myself a little bit closer to that, or support a one-state solution in some cases, but in any case, um, uh, all of us, I think, agree with you that whatever happens, the occupation must end, and that is a human rights abuse. That is something we stand for, that needs to end, whatever, if there's to be any just peace. We are almost out of time. If there's anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to say, Amjad and Arik, maybe briefly, if you want to supplement what you've said in any way, we'll do that, and then Rabbi Margot will come in and wrap us up.
Amjad?
Yeah, the only thing I was hoping is if there's more people can be here, boots on the ground with Eric. This is what I believe that's the most important thing for us as Palestinians. If we can, financially, I don't know about the financial, but the guys and people on the ground would make a huge difference for us. If it's possible, if there's any help to Eric and his group, I will really appreciate that. And we thank you very much.
I can only echo that. We need you here on the ground. Please, going out of your comfort zone, leaving, taking a break from a job, or if you're working, or all these other things, it's putting yourself at some risk. But Sam did it, others have done it, and we really need you here. Maybe just on a Hanukkah theme. And as I've been lighting the candles every night, or just about every night, in these Palestinian communities, and I talk a little bit about what the meaning of Hanukkah is, and among other things, um, of course, people here can really resonate that this is about the victory of the just over the unjust, the the few and weaker over the mightier and larger, more powerful. Uh, and we need that in our day. And if there was a miracle back then, we need that today. But it happens when we all do it together and believe that we can do it with God's
And let me
help.
just add to
And
that. Yes, thank you. Let me just add, if anybody on this call wants to contact me about what it's like to do it, I'd be very happy to respond. You can email me via partners, or email Rabbi Margot and she can pass it on to me. I can talk to you about logistics, about how to do things. I talked to Rabbi Arik about the possibility of organizing an entire group to come over, maybe together. That would be nice, but so far I haven't had enough uptake to do it. But if people are interested, you can obviously contact Rabbi Arik, fill out the form, or you can also talk to me before you do. Rabbi
and
Margot,
read Sam's excellent article on his experiences here.
that can be, you can Google that.
Absolutely. I'll know. Sam's article is also available. We did a special edition of our e-magazine, Israel Horizons. I will preview for the folks on that call that our December edition is also about to drop today. So many of you will be getting an email in your inboxes. But thank you again, Amjad, Sam, Arik, and thanks to everyone who joined us. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar. If you want to share this conversation with your friends or your wider community, the recording of this conversation will be online in a few days. Please make sure you're signed up on our email list and or subscribe to our YouTube page to be alerted as soon as it's available. And for those who missed the opening, I'll say again, while today's program has been free, generous contributions are what enable this organization to deliver these events and these webinars at no cost. Please visit progressiveisrael.org, check out our upcoming programming, and if you can, please make a donation. Thank you again, really, to everyone who joined us today. We're really grateful to have spent this time learning together, and I want to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. Take care and
Thank
be
you
well.
also.
Thank you, Rabbi Margot. Thank you, Rabbi Arik. Thank you, Hajj Amjad.
You're welcome.